All right, so our last video, we started to learn about the card layout. So we're going to continue with that. And specifically, today we're going to learn about how to adjust these images and get them working with our card layout. So because that'll be a challenge in of itself. So I found a card layout. I like this one. You can see that each of the cards are more identifiable with a background color. They've got some spacing. We've got our title. And then this looks to be like a link or a tag or a category with a date. So we don't have any links on ours. Sometimes you can make the entire card a link if you want to go that way, or we can add a button to our card. There's many different card layouts. So go ahead, look at a few, find some that you like, and try to recreate it, because that's the best thing you can do as a developer. Is you're going to be given a design and you're going to need to basically take that mock-up and make it into a real thing. And I really, really enjoy that aspect of it. I think it's one of the funnest things that I get to do. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. So first thing we need to do, we need to adjust our grid template columns here. And I know we haven't covered this, but we will get into it in another video. Okay, so what that did is we've created as many columns as we could to fill our row here, because that's what we want with all of our cards. And as soon as we hit 230 pixels in each of these card layouts, it will jump it to the next line. So it makes it for a really nice one-line, smooth transition for all of our cards. If we need to get more specific at different breakpoints, we can do that. For right now, we'll just keep it simple. So first thing I noticed in our card layout that we're trying to mimic is we got a gap between our cards. So let's do that. I'm just spitballing here. I think it looks about 15 pixels between each card, so we're going to roll with that. With your site, you can do what you feel is appropriate. So I've got a gap of 15 pixels, added it there nicely. Okay, so what's the next thing we notice about our cards? Well, it looks like they've got a white background color. So let's go ahead and add a background color to each of our cards. And we need to find out what that class was for each of our cards. And that was this. Okay, so we'll put a background color, and let's find one of our background colors that we used in our theme. We'll do this one. Okay, so let's see what that looks like. Okay, not great, but not necessarily bad. Again, we can get into colors and adjusting and designing later. So for now, we've got our background color. Now we need that padding. So like our example about the Amazon package, right, that box. Now we need to add padding to our content here, to this little card. And that will go all the way around and add that space around our content. So on our card, we need to add padding. And this padding looks to be about the same space that is our gap. So I'm just going to do padding of 15 pixels all the way around our card. Okay, perfect. So that added that. All right, so now the biggest challenge here, these images, okay? Ideally, in a perfect world, all the images that we use would be properly sized. And then we don't have to worry about this weird scenario that we're running into here. But I think it's beneficial to show that when you don't properly size your images, you're going to find yourself doing lots of weird tricks and trying to get the layout to work. And you know, at the end of the day, you're just going to have a big headache. You're going to be frustrated, and you're not going to want to develop. So my advice is just get your images properly sized. And I can show you that in some upcoming videos that I have planned with WordPress and how that all works. For now, I know we're just a beginner, so let's just start out, figure out how can we tackle this and try to make it as best as possible. But again, we're not going to get that perfect layout unless we do some work with the images. But let's pretend that we don't know any of that, and how are we going to attempt this, okay? So the first thing, I noticed this image is about 222 pixels tall. This one is what, 253, and this one's 510. So ideally, we want these all to kind of be the same size, right? Like, look at this one. These are all kind of a square. So what we could do, we could just go off the smallest image and just say, let's just make them all 220 pixels tall. So why don't we do that? What would happen if we did that? So we've got our class here, cards image. And we could set a height here on our image and just say, yep, I want them all 220 pixels tall. All right, well, that kind of did it, but there's some gap here. So what do I do with that, you know? Okay, well, we could, maybe we set a width on our image. We could try that. So we'll just say width, 100%. Okay, sweet, we're done. Not quite. Look how stretched that image is. That's not really great, right? So, but if we properly size these images, see, look how massive these are, 1920 pixels wide, but we're stuffing it in a 340 wide card box, right? So that's not very great. So what do we need to do? Well, first of all, we could do this. Let's go down this path. Maybe we decide that we're going to put all of our images in a container. Okay, so div class cards. Let's call this image container. Okay. Put this up here. Okay, so what could we do here? Well, we could set a height here, or we could set like a max height, like don't go bigger than the size. So don't go bigger than, say, 226 pixels, all right? Okay, well, first of all, I also put, got to get rid of this. Okay, so that shrunk up our card, but this image is still busting out of it, and you can still see kind of like our text and content there. So that didn't really work. So a trick that I've often seen people do is they'll wrap an image in like a parent container, and then they'll put their max height or their height on there, and then they'll say like overflow hidden. Okay, well now we're getting closer, right? But look at this. So we've got our image ever so slightly. I mean, I don't even know if you can see this. Oops, I don't want to print. Let's really zoom this in here. So if we look at our image, and then we go back to our parent, see this blue? Well, it's saying our parent is 204 pixels tall, but the image is only 201 pixels tall. What's going on here? Now, you might not think that this matters, but trust me, every little space that's weird or off, it will matter. So in the end, it might bite you. It might not bite you now, but you might be doing something responsibly and the whole layout's off because you've got some weird space going on. So it's always good. Just take the time, look into it, figure out what is causing that space, because there is a reason why that space is being caused. So, and each weird space you encounter will be different. So in this case, our image, by default, our images are display in line. And that just means it's just going to float however it floats in line on the content. But if it's a block, it's going to fill its entire container. So let's check that out. If I were to add display block to this, watch very carefully what happens to this text. See that move? Well, now look here. Now our image and that container, there's no gap. Pretty interesting, huh? So now we've got a clean, nice, perfectly displayed block image that we won't have any weird space. So that's one thing we want. Now, again, this goes back to rolling your own custom reset, CSS reset, because I would already have that on all of my images. Another thing to note, we have a max width here, but our images aren't really being displayed with a width of 100%. And I might have not done anything now, but let's hold off on that, and I'll show you kind of why that could become problematic. So, okay, we've got our max height, we've got our images display block now. Okay, so what would we do? Well, again, ideally we would have these all properly sized. So we could put the height there. And if we put our width 100% here again, that just stretches them, right? So that's no good. We don't want to be stretching our images. we could remove the height here, go back here and set this to overflow hidden. And then that doesn't stretch the images, but then we're just hiding whatever's breaking out of the container. So overflow is kind of a neat trick. I wouldn't consider it something that you'd always want to do, but watch what happens. Now, as soon as I'm kind of changing my device width, they're only ever going to be a max height of that. But if we look at this, so that one's 180, but we've got it can go up to 226 before it'll start cutting off. So you could call that possibly acceptable if you felt like you don't care that the images are, breaking out there. But I think we could do probably a little better. Let me show you another kind of cool trick. So what we could do, we can actually use something called object fit. And we can say cover this whole space. We need to take off and I think this needs a width of 100% here. Yeah, okay, so our images, yeah, that's what I was meaning with that. We need our width on our images so they'll fill the whole space. And then this little property here, so instead of it, distorting that image and keeping it very, like you can see the size, how we're just setting a very specific height, and it's not going to adjust or respond to that. It's just going to be that height. Putting this on it will kind of zoom in. There's many different values here. Like we could say fill if we wanted, which again kind of stretches it. We could say like contain, where we keep the original size of the image. So there's a lot of cool properties. I think cover works pretty well as long as you don't mind how it maybe zooms in on the particular type of the image. Again, since we never really specified our image size, we're a little limited to what we could do. But I like this because look what's happening. We're not getting that weird space like before with our images, right? So it does kind of help keep them contained to what we're needing. So that's kind of a good solution. I feel like that's maybe kind of the best that you can really get until you get those proper image sizes that I keep talking about. You're probably like, just shut up about it. All right, well, anyways, we'll continue with our card layout. We'll try to match this design a little bit, get some other spacing and such. So I hope you found that useful. Again, I spent a little bit more time on this part because I know I have personally struggled through working with images. So we'll continue to cover that. I hope you found this super useful and somewhat see how, even when I'm trying to explain it, how I struggle through now what goes where. Yeah, you can see it's a difficult subject. So anyways, hope you liked it. I'll catch you in the next one. Thanks.